You can start now.
Namaste. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of East West Seed India, FICCI and the Embassy of Netherlands in India, a warm welcome to all of you to this webinar titled How to Lift India's Smallholder Farmers Out of Poverty. I'm Ananda UVL. I'm Head of Corporate Communications and Public Affairs at East West Seed India. I would like to now invite the Ambassador of Netherlands to India, Nepal and Bhutan, His Excellency Martin Waardenburg, to honor us with his keynote address.
Thank you so much, Ananda. Namaskar, namaste to everyone. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be part of this webinar with so many distinguished guests. And well, I think we're all virtual. I think we're all living in a digital world, unfortunately, sometimes as well. And I think it very much illustrates well, our challenges today and because of COVID-19. And I hope you're all in good health and will stay in good health. The agricultural sector. The agricultural sector is, as you're all very, very much aware, of course, is extremely important. It's a very relevant sector in our society, and you see that in almost every country. In the Netherlands, it's a very important sector. It's in the European Union, a very important sector, and also in India. Not only because of the economics of the sector, but also of the social issues, what it means for people, for the cultural dimension. So I think agriculture has a lot of dimensions. And I think if you see the debate in the Indian society today about the reforms in the agricultural sector, I think it's an illustration how important it is from a political point of view, a social point of view, economic point of view. We see that worldwide, a lot of farmers are really struggling to earn a decent living. And in the case of the Indian farmers, it's more than 86% own less than 2 hectares of land. And it, of course, makes it very difficult to benefit from the economies of scales of new technologies and to increase productivity. Smallholders are often stuck using primitive methods, which limit, of course, productivity. And they lack access to the right inputs and the right knowledge. And then markets fail them when they try to sell their products. And on top of these challenges, they are increasingly affected, of course, by the changing climate. And we see that the position of women and the youth is very, very vulnerable. But the good news, I think, is that policies can really make a difference. We are able to uplift the agricultural sector. We can help to realize SDG 2, ending hunger. We can really make a difference in achieving food security and encouraging sustainable agricultural practices. And the Indian government aims to improve farmers' plight. They recently allowed farmers to sell their products outside the mandis as well as through contract farming. And the impact remains to be seen, but I believe that more market-based structures will contribute to a better functioning of the agricultural sector. I'm really hopeful that these policy changes will allow farmers to fetch a better price. And I'm also positive about the role that digital platforms and startups such as Clover Ventures can play to connect the farmers to the markets. What they basically do is increase transparency of a market, and better transparency in the market will also lead to a better functioning of the market, in my opinion. The large group of Indian smallholders and marginal farmers, close to 126 million, poses enormous challenges for the government to reach them with relevant technologies. And moreover, conventional modern farming is not always adapted to the diverse Indian agroecologies. I think it's important that we focus on all the components of agriculture. We recently celebrated World Soil Day on the 5th of December, and good soil health means a better crop, and a better crop means a satisfied farmer. And in this respect, I want to congratulate Dr. Lal on being awarded the 2020 World Food Prize for his outstanding work on this topic. Congratulations. Soil health was one of the focus area of digital innovation mission we recently organized to India. And in that mission, 21 Dutch researchers, startups, companies, and civil society representatives were connected with Indian stakeholders to find solutions to the challenge of climate smart agriculture. Several proposals for joint research and R&D have been developed since then. And by improving small farm productivity, rural poverty reduction can really be achieved. And this has been proven in Asia during the Green Revolution in the 1960s, even though this approach has not reached everyone and also had some unintended side effects. But we cannot underestimate the importance it has had for food security. Unfortunately, Dr. Swaminathan, who was the first laureate of the World Food Prize, could not join us today. But he was very much part of this very important revolution. So I also would like to personally give my congratulations to him for his contribution to the revolution in the agricultural sector in India. I also would like to congratulate the 2000 winner of the World Food Prize, Dr. Surinder Vasal, for his research, for his leadership in improving the productivity and nutritional content of maize. India, being the world's second largest producer of fruits and vegetables, has the potential to become the food factory of the world. And yet there is scope to improve efficiency and help farmers earning better incomes for their productions. And on the way to do so, it is by encouraging vegetable farming and providing training on this. The Netherlands is working with the government of India to set up centers of excellence to train farmers. But of course, we cannot reach everyone. So this is why it's crucial to have companies like East West Seed that provide the world's smallholder farmers with access to quality seeds, to develop varieties adapted to tropical markets and growing conditions, and train vegetable farmers in order to help maximize their yield and their income. Their model shows that you can make a real difference in people's lives while also operating a successful business. So I'm really proud that Dr. Simon de Groot has been awarded the World Food Prize last year, and that East West Seed was ranked first in the Access to Seeds Index. So it will be a pleasure to hear from all of you, as well to the other distinguished speakers today. And I'm hoping you have a very productive discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador Berg. I'm happy to introduce to you Meghna Ravishankar, Director of International Boardwalk Dialogue, the World Food Prize Foundation moderator for today's discussion. Meghna Ravishankar joined the World Food Prize Foundation as the Director of the International Boardwalk Dialogue in March 2019. She is responsible for the coordination and implementation of major programs and activities directly related to the World Food Prize events, including International Boardwalk Dialogue, Digital Dialogue, and other special events. Prior to joining the World Food Prize, Meghna worked at the United Nations Development Program in New York on the Global Program on Nature for Development. She holds a BA in Global Development and Entrepreneurship from Grinnell College and an MA in Sustainable International Development from Brandeis University. I'd like to now invite Meghna Ravishankar to take charge of the session.
Thank you so much, Ananda. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with the illustrious panel that we have today, and it's very exciting to be among such wonderful, humble, compassionate, and inspirational people. So thank you everyone who's joining us from around the world for this session on such an important topic, uplifting smallholder farmers in India. And I'm eager to jump into the discussion and hear from all of our wonderful World Food Prize laureates. As everyone I'm sure knows, all of these individuals have dedicated their careers and decades of work to improving food security around the world, to improving the lives of people. And you will hear more about that throughout this session. So we'll begin with some introductory remarks from each of our speakers and then dive into a deeper discussion. We have Dr. Ratan Lal with us today. As you just heard from the ambassador, he's our 2020 World Food Prize laureate, serves as the Distinguished University Professor of Soil Science and founding director of the Carbon Management and Sequestration Center at The Ohio State University. Dr. Lal is here with us for a short time today, so I'm going to invite him to make his remarks. Dr. Lal, throughout your career, your work has been aimed at translating climate science to action for the benefit of smallholders, for the benefit of humanity. So how does soil carbon sequestration really change the lives of smallholders, especially in India? And I know there are some issues that are dear to your heart that you talk about, specifically with the burning of stubble and other things that are coming up more relevantly today. So I invite you to share your thoughts and remarks on that.
Meghna, thank you very much. It's really a great honor and privilege to be invited, especially amongst colleagues whom I respect very highly for their contribution. Dr. Khosh, Dr. Vassal, Dr. Swaminathan, who is not here today. And I also want to thank His Excellency, the Ambassador, for making very good remark, very pertinent, and for his kind words. These are greatly appreciated. I'm going to take, Meghna, being selfish, 5 minutes or so. So say a few remarks because I have another commitment also for India at 8 o'clock. And I was scheduled to be for this event at 9:30. So somehow there was a mix up in the schedule. Um, I also want to compliment the Indian scientists, those who are present here especially, that they made a remarkable progress in addressing food security. In 47, when the population was 300 million, food grain production was only 50 million ton. At present, the population is 1.4 billion in India, and the food production reached 300 million ton. So the rate of food production in India has been much higher than the rate of population growth. And that credit goes to plant breeders and farmers and the universities, of course, including Punjab Agriculture University and others who made a tremendous success of eliminating the food deficit and making India one of the important food exporter nation. So that's very remarkable indeed. I was very pleased just a few days ago at the World Soil Day. ICAR received the King Bhumi Bol Atulya Tej award for the soil health initiative of ICAR. So that's a very good sign that recognized that ICAR has started research on soil health, and World Soil Day, they got recognized. And I must say that ICAR, I do not know whoever will represent to receive the King Bhumi Bol World Soil Day Award. It will be given by Her Royal Highness Princess Mahachakri Shirindharan of Thailand in January 2021. So I'm very delighted to see that ICAR got rewarded for their program on soil health. Having said that, I think that award also has some expectation that ICAR and India will deliver something more important, more tangible on soil health. And in that regard, I would propose that we consider 10 points for developing a tangible program. And number one of those is that the health of soil, plants, animal, people, environment, and the planet is one and indivisible. Therefore, health of soil, which affects 140 million hectare in India, is an issue that deserves a very high priority. Second thing I like to mention is that the soil health and functionality are critical to local, national, regional, and global peace and political stability because it will minimize the soil and climate refugees, decrease cause of civil strife and political unrest, and it's also the basis of Sanskrit phrase Vasudeva Kutumbakam, that world is one family. The third point I would like ICR and the agriculture scientists in India to consider carefully is a social issue that people are the mirror image of the soil they live on. When people are poverty stricken, desperate, starving, miserable, they pass on their sufferings to the soil. And the degraded soil reciprocates. And this vicious cycle can only be broken through a logical entry point of restoring and sustaining soil health, especially in India. Four, just as there are universal rights of human and rights of animals, India must also consider rights of soil. Being the essence of all terrestrial life, soil must have the rights to be protected, restored, thrive, and managed judiciously and properly. Simply because a Patwari or Tahsildar has given a paper that this is your 2 hectares of land does not mean that you can do with it whatever you wish, such as scalping top 1 meter for brick making. That is just like cutting somebody's head off and then saying, well, the rest of the body is okay. Number 5, sustainable management of soil and health and agriculture, I think, have a very bright future, especially in India, because I believe that more changes will occur between 2020 and 2050 than have happened over the past 12,000 years since the agriculture began. To that respect, the respect of the farming profession is very critical. The policies in India must be pro-farmer, they must be pro-nature, and they must be pro-poor, and farmers are poor. And as long as farmers are poor, things will not improve. Number 6, we do have a tragedy amongst plenty of food insecurity affecting 150 million people in India. And I would like to make a hypothesis, and I strongly believe in it, that famine in India and perhaps elsewhere is a man-made tragedy. We have plenty of grains, but yet 150 million people do not have access to it. Therefore, this tragedy can be eliminated by restoring and managing soil health, and we must make famine and mass starvation wherever happen politically intolerable. So it's a policy issue, morally toxic, ethically unthinkable, and humanly unacceptable. There is no deficiency of grains in India, and yet people starving. That's a social problem and a political problem. I would also like to mention in relation to soil health, number 7 point, that soil is just like a bank account. It is not possible to take more out of a soil than what is put into it without degrading its quality and jeopardizing its capacity to generate ecosystem services. Unfortunately, in India, the extractive farming, we have been taking out a lot more than we put in. Everything is taken out. And that is the cause of the degradation of soil health. The other part which policymakers have to understand, that when the soil become marginal, it has a domino effect. Marginal soils cultivated, marginal inputs produce marginal yields and support marginal living. And that is a law that we must reverse. And reversal of that law means improving soil health. Therefore, the yield gap can be bridged. Yields in India, especially of the dryland soil, can be easily doubled, maybe tripled. And that is an important part. Number 9, that soil is really can be a sink of atmospheric carbon dioxide. Therefore, soil carbon, which in soils of India, especially northwestern part of India, Punjab, Haryana, UP, Rajasthan, is less than 0.5% organic matter, sometimes as less as 0.1%. Optimal rate for any use efficiency, fertilizer, irrigation, even improved varieties, their potential to be realized should be about 3%. So we have a long way to go. That means the farmer must be compensated for adopting better practices of returning residual biomass. It's not a punishment that will do it. It's a compensation to those who adopt better practices, rewarding them. And I've been suggesting that at a rate of about $20 per acre per year. That comes to about 1,200, 1,500 rupees per acre per year. That is a kind of payment that we should encourage. And the last point is that the soils are integral to achieving sustainable development goals of the United Nations that India is signatory to. In 2016, 17, just 2, 3 years ago, um, Prime Minister Modi made a commitment of restoring 6 million hectares of degraded soils. That goal will not be met with current policies and many other sustainable development goals because agriculture and soils are not part of the agenda, and they should be made part of the agenda to achieve sustainable development goals. So those are the 10 points that I wanted to mention. I can be still available for another 10 minutes. And I again apologize, mix up in my calendar. I had this thing scheduled at 9:30 rather than at 7:30. Thank you, Meghna, for giving me the time.
Dr. Lal, thank you so much for your comments. And as always, you leave us with a lot to think about in true academic fashion. I think something that really came out of what Dr. Lal said, that the ambassador highlighted as well, is that this is a multi-dimensional issue. Agriculture is a multi-dimensional issue, and it needs multi-dimensional solutions. And that is part and parcel of all of your work, I think. So at this stage, I think it makes good sense to welcome Dr. Simon Groot to come in and share his remarks. Dr. Groot is the founder of East West Seed, is a 6th generation Dutch seedsman, and was the World Food Prize laureate of 2019. Dr. Groot, your career has been dedicated to improving the quality and access to vegetable seeds around the world. Something that Dr. Lal highlighted. It's essential to have breeders and seedsmen to emphasize and elevate the status of farmers around the world. So what are the unique benefits, in your opinion and in your work, of hybrid vegetable seeds in boosting farmer incomes and livelihoods?
Well, thank you, Magna. Very happy to respond also directly to Dr. Lal, because he touched on a point regarding Indian soils that also is close to our heart, and that is the soils for onion farming, which is a very concrete objective. Onions need a very excellent soil condition, and I think there is more specific work required to look into the potential of yield increase of onion farming through soil improvement. I think onions, sorry that I get so specific, but you have to leave, and it's a subject that might be of interest to you. We have a lot of experience in onion farming in Holland, with the highest yields per hectare in the world, and we are therefore one of the biggest exporters of onions. And India has one of the biggest onion acreages in the world. So there is a lot of technology on onion soils and onion farming in Holland. Onion soils are very demanding on physical qualities of the soil, uh, freedom of pathogens, and the chemical structure. 3 elements that play a big role in improving soil quality regarding onion farming. And I think there is a real need for taking a much closer look at the needs for practical soil management improvements through soil science in these 3 components: physical, chemical, and pathogen or problems in the soils. So let's see how we can find ways to join forces, either through Holland or other donors, to work together on soil improvement for specific onion farming. Now, regarding other things more in general, sorry I had to jump into this specific subject, but I wanted to bring it up before you would have to leave. We started working on the improvement of tropical vegetable seeds, initially in Southeast Asia, Philippines, in the sequence Philippines, Thailand, and then Indonesia. And it took us about 20 years to achieve some real achievement in improving the genetics of tropical vegetables. And then we discovered that there was also a big need for adding another component to our activities, and that is improving farmer skills, because farmers cannot achieve much with improved seeds when they do not also acquire the better skills to handle these improved systems and the better genetics. So that was what we call the knowledge transfer programs that were also tested out in these initial 3 countries. And now we are in the stage that we are ready to introduce these same uh, acquired skills in how to train farmers into becoming better vegetable farmers. And well, I am one of the elder peoples here, I think, and I was still a student in my old days of Jan Timbergen, the famous Nobel Prize laureate in economics, and he was one of the most effective development economists in the world, and he taught us all the biggest enemy of this world is poverty. Let's all join together to fight poverty. And his main book were all about poverty alleviation. And I think that's what we have to do, get small farmers out of poverty. And I think vegetable farming is one of the better tools to achieve that. We have, I think, achieved that for a few million farmers in Southeast Asia so far. We hope we can also deliver some contribution to helping Indian farmers in the more remote, underprivileged regions of India to move away from poverty. And then there's Africa to follow up. So India, again, is one of the main countries where we will now try to apply these acquired experiences and skills in farmer development, farmer training into the parts of India that are in most need of it. So that was really my role, and I'm so happy that finally the small farmers growing vegetables got some recognition through the award of my World Food Prize last year. I think that is what I wanted to add since you're still with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Meghna, please forgive me. I'll take leave now. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you for joining us, Dr. Lal.
Thank you.
Good,
Dr.
Dr.
Bye.
Thank you for your comments and for adding in all of those ideas while Dr. Lal was still here. Thank you, Dr. Lal. In light of all of your comments, I think this might be a good way to transition to include some of our other speakers as well. Dr. Vassal, I'll go to you next. Dr. Surinder Vassal is a geneticist and plant breeder known for his contributions in developing high protein maize at CIMMYT and was awarded the World Food Prize in the year 2000. So Dr. Vassal, your work has focused on a number of issues, but nutrition and plant breeding have always been at the core. So can you talk to us about the importance of improving nutritional content and nutritional levels, especially in staple crops?
Thank you, Meghna, for arranging this meeting. Now, I started working with CIMMYT, in 1970, and my main assignment was try to improve the quality of protein in maize. Now, when we talk of improving nutritional quality, I think we need to think about the world food basket. And this is consists of at least six major grains, which are relatively wheat, barley, rice, oat, and corn also. So I think now if we look at the statistics of year 2000, more or less all these major crops which contribute to the world food basket, they were producing roughly 600 million tons per year worldwide. But now if you see today, I think maize is producing more than 1 billion tons of uh, grain compared to wheat and rice, which are almost 200 or 300 million tons less. So I think now maize, I consider it's a gifted crop. I think that so many things can be done. It's not only we talk about grain, it's used for food, feed, and now for fuel also in many industrial use. But then I think it is also used now as a vegetable, like baby corn. I think if you go to Oriental countries, lot of countries use baby corn in their vegetable. Like Thailand, when I was there in Thailand for 4 years, so they were actually running their breeding program based on whatever earnings they had from the sale of baby corn and sweet corn. So again, this is then sweet corn is another example which can be used, so which can also be used as a vegetable or in soups. So, and then I think if you go to the highlands of, South America, Bolivia, Peru, I think there, we have all different kinds of maize types, which can be used, which are very big grains, can be used as snacks. And then there are also types, which have got outer layer, pericarp, which is colored, sometimes blue, sometimes black, which also has got high quality or high content of minerals. So now when I joined, CIMIT, I think we were still at a point, what is more important, protein or calories? So there was a big debate going on among nutritionists, what should be more emphasized, whether we emphasize calories or we emphasize the protein quality. So at that time, anyway, we had a UNDP grant, which gave us money to conduct work on research on improving the quality of protein in maize. And fortunately, at that time, there are different ways of improving the nutritional quality depending on what we want to improve. But fortunately, in Purdue University, they discovered a gene which is called opaque-2, which increased the level of lysine almost twice than what was present in the normal maize. Well, it was very easy to incorporate this maize, and the grains were very easy to, identify because they have soft, chalky appearance. But unfortunately, they had a little bit yield penalty, 10 to 15% depending on the genotype. So this was again, first was to introduce it, but then we have the second generation problem of how to improve its agronomic performance and also the soft Jackie endosperm, which is not accepted in many parts of the world, how to improve that one. So I think again, at this time, one thing is very important in breeding is you must know what are the choices available to the breeder in improving the nutritional content of the corn. So there are different people like University of Missouri, they start improving using recurrent selection program, trying to improve the protein quality. Then the Purdue University, they had a combination of opaque-2 and sugary-2. And then in CIMIT, we used a different kind of strategy, which was trying to use genetic modifiers, try to correct all the different kind of problems that we faced in opaque-2 or quality protein maize. Now, I think at this point, what I want to emphasize is sometimes when you have so many problems resulting from introduction of a gene, you have to think of one single strategy which can solve all the problems. This is one thing is very important, and I still believe right now the number of problems we have in every crop. It's not only improving the yield, but also diseases, drought, nitrogen uptake, all those problems are there. I think we need to think, can we think of a single strategy which can overcome all these problems? This is the most important point. There is no money for doing work for every project, for improving this disease or that disease. And this is where, my later years, this has been my major focus, how to design one single strategy which can overcome all the problems. So this is one thing which I think is very important, especially even in CGR, the funds also keep fluctuating. So it becomes much more important that we have to do more with less. We also have to use some kind of time jumping strategies, how we can do things in a relatively shorter period of time. So, in my opinion, it's using hybrid technology, at least in the case of maize. I think we can use inbred hybrid technology, and if we have very diverse germplasm base, I think we can solve all the problems using this technology. And my own personal experience is, if you have a wide germplasm base, you can evaluate. Testing is also very important. Testing and evaluation of material is very important. You will not know what are the good qualities present on any inbred line unless you evaluate it. And I personally evaluated myself, because I was working in a non-profit organization, evaluate lines for, downy mildew, for aluminum toxicity, for stunt streak, for nitrogen, high density, low density, the same set of lines. And it was surprising for me to find some lines which were good for 4 characters, which lines were good for 3 characters, some for only 1 character. So again, I think my conclusion from this work was, which I did at Thailand along with the cooperation of Department of Agriculture and also Kasa University, showed very clearly, if you have a very strong germplasm or a source base of inward line, and if you evaluate those same set of lines for different kinds of problems, you will always find, some materials which are tolerant or resistant to these kind of problems. One good example is, work on aluminum toxicity, as you know, is in all the soils in South America, even in Indonesia. You know, they are very toxic, presence of high aluminum. And actually, when they evaluate 2 lines, they started, they picked up 2 lines which are completely resistant to this kind of problem, because otherwise the breeding, it takes very long. You have to maintain with liming the pH of the soil and other thing. But just evaluating the lines which I supplied, they were able to pick up 2 lines which they are still using as testers in their program. So there are quite a bit examples of this kind of thing. If you have a diverse germplasm base, which is very, very important, this cannot be ignored. It should be diverse, you know. And then I think as we go into the hybrid technology, there are few things which, in my opinion, are not considered by most of the breeders. One is, we cannot talk of, just like in US, they have 2 populations which are used as heterotic groups or pattern. But I think like in CIMID, we have got so many different materials, white, yellows, early, late, so we cannot be satisfied with 2 groups. So we have to have more groups. Also, the important point I mentioned is in hybrid technology. Hybrid technology should not be viewed only as a way to develop inbred lines and hybrid. We should also think as a way to improve also source germplasm from which the inbred lines are to be derived. So the improvement of the source germplasm should also continue along with development of inbred lines and hybrid. So this is very important. And the last one I would just like to mention is what kind of hybrid you want to produce. I think this is in case of maize, we have good experience. We started with non-conventional hybrids, like top crosses, double top crosses, rattle hybrids. Then we switched over to double crosses, then over a period of time to three-way hybrids. And but then almost after 40 years, then we moved to what we call simple hybrid, which is called single cross, only which involves only two parents. So this is the way we have to go. And then I think we need to always think of sophisticating our process of breeding. Sophisticating means which are the populations which could be called as a seed parent, which can be called as a pollen parent, so that you know this one there. The recycling should also be limited within the same heterotic group. But one area which is not talked in maize breeding, even in the advanced country, is how to develop heterotic models. And this is my challenge. At least I'm aware of all the germplasm which is available all over the world. What are the lines which are available? I'm trying to develop some kind of heterotic model, which can be used as a guide for breeding better hybrids in different situations, of the world. So this is something is very, very important in my opinion. Now, just one more point to nutritional quality. I think we talk about, I think there are so many traits which we can improve. In maize, in my opinion, we can make it a miracle crop considering the size or the of the number of the billions of tons which is produced. I think we can easily have protein content about 10%. Quality of the protein can be improved for lysine, tryptophan, which increases the efficiency of the protein. On the top of that, we can also increase the size of the germ or oil content, which will also increase the energy density in the grain, which is also very important. And now, of course, as we are working also on the micronutrients, I think we can also add provitamin A. So I think we can, in case of maize, I think it's not only the yield enhancement, but also we can add several nutritional traits like protein content, quality, oil content, and provitamin A. So this will really, in my opinion, make it something which I like to call as a miracle maize. So it's a wonderful crop. I think and then the last thing I would like to mention is there a breeder of cross-pollinated crop, or in my case, I think I have tried all methods that are possible or written in the books. And in addition, devised also some methods, modified them, also. So I think I always now give a talks to most of the self-breeder crops, what the experience what I have gained in cross-pollinated crop, how some of these experiences can be transferred and used in the case of self-pollinated crop. Also in self-pollinated crop, if we have to go for hybrid technology, I think we have to go for two-parent technology, not the male style line, the maintainers, then the also the restorers. It's a very complicated process, and I think we need to think how we can go forward, with some kind of photosensitive uh, uh, lines which are meal style or something like that. So again, I think self-pollinated crop, this is a possibility, but it will require very long-standing research. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for this remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Vassal. There's so much that we can unpack when we get into a deeper discussion in a moment. But I think something that stuck with me from what you said was identifying the single solution that can address a number of these issues. And I'm sure we'll come back to that idea when we get into a conversation with your fellow panelists. At this stage, I'd like to invite Dr. Gurdev Kush to join in and share some of his perspectives. Dr. Kush is a member of the US National Academy of Sciences and is adjunct professor emeritus at the University of California, Davis, and the World Food Prize laureate of 1996. Now, Dr. Kush, you also have a background in plant breeding, but in a different crop. So perhaps you can share your perspectives in terms of rice and how that might be different from the things that Dr. Vassal highlighted about maize and the impact and the differences there.
Thank you very much for the invitation to join this webinar. It's very appropriate at this stage that there are still so many small farmers, as His Excellency Ambassador Martin mentioned. There are almost 86% of the farmers who are small farmers having less than 2 hectares. So our focus of this webinar is what can be done to improve the well-being of the small scale farmers. I had a experience mostly in rice breeding during my career, and many things which we focused during the Green Revolution are applicable to the present situation of small farmers. So if we have to improve their quality of life, their betterment of their situation, what we need is approach from many sides. Dr. Ratan Lal mentioned very important aspect for increasing the productivity of small scale farmers by addressing the issues of soil improvement. I think the most important lesson we have learned from the Green Revolution is the improving the varieties in many characteristics. One of the most important was raising the yield potential, of course, doubling the yield potential of rice and wheat. And so we should still focus on continuous improvement of the yield potential of the crop varieties. And one of the approaches the hybrid varieties. Hybrids generally can contribute 10 to 15%, sometimes 20% yield improvement. So the application of hybrid breeding is very important, and I am very happy to note that Dr. Groot and his company's work in developing the hybrid vegetables is of tremendous importance for helping the small scale farmers. One of the very important application of plant breeding was in the Green Revolution was shortening the growth duration. Most of the old varieties, for example, they took 150 to 170 days to mature one crop. We reduced the growth duration to 110 days. Most of the rice varieties which are grown now in tropics and subtropics mature in 110 days. That made it possible for farmers to grow 2 crops where only one was grown. So that has been one of the major achievements in increasing the food production. I think this is still should be our focus to reduce the growth duration so that we can add another small short growth duration crop. Vegetables, for example, some of the vegetables take 50 to 60 days, even some are much shorter. If those can be added to the farmers' approaches for adding another crop, that will be extremely important. Another area which is very important for the small scale farmers, of course, is the development of variety with pest resistance. Many farmers are forced to use the insecticides, which is not only expensive, it's not good for the environment. So the small scale farmers will definitely benefit from the genetic resistance, variety to genetic resistance to diseases and insects. With the changing climate, drought is becoming quite obvious problem. We have droughts in some areas, flooding in the other areas. So I think the varieties, short, small scale farmers will greatly benefit from varieties which have drought tolerance. So drought tolerance should be one of the focus for improving the productivity of the small scale farmers. Dr. Wassel mentioned the value addition. I think the varieties with value addition, like he mentioned, improved amino acid balance, the golden rice, so-called golden rice, which hopefully will come on the horizon. There has been a lot of work going on the development of golden rice, which will contribute to the well-being of small-scale farmers, because many of those require crops or foods which have better nutritional content. So golden rice with vitamin A will be very, very helpful in uplifting the small-scale farmers, because many small-scale farmers, particularly the poor people, can't afford the high-value crops, foods, which contribute vitamin A, which is extremely important for the proper human development. High quality seed. I think many of the small scale farmers don't have access to high quality seed. Sometimes they are misled. I know the examples where the some of the traders were selling the hybrid seed, which they were not. There are sometimes not proper germination level. So the proper quality seed is extremely important for the small scale farmers, so they have access to the best quality seeds. Marketing is very important. Sometimes, the proper marketing can benefit the small scale farmers. Sometimes they don't have the access where they can take it to the market, where they can get better prices. And sometimes there is overproduction, so they have to throw some of these crops away. I know the case in India. Sometimes there is a excess production of potatoes and farmers can't sell it. They have to throw it away. So the marketing is extremely important for the small scale farmers. Mixed farming is another approach which is very useful for small scale farmers, because in many small farmers have few animals. Cow, for example, they can sell little get extra income by selling milk, or sometimes small scale farmers have additional income from poultry, for example. So the mixed farming is extremely valuable for small scale farmers. So I would like to say that the climate smart agriculture will help us all, small scale or whether large scale. Climate smart agriculture is going to be the answer to some of the problems of small scale farmers. Thank you very, very much for giving me the opportunity to interact with you on this occasion. And I am very happy that this webinar is being organized to address the problems of small scale farmers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kush, for all of your very insightful comments, and just giving us this picture that you've painted of the again, the multidimensional nature of this issue. So at this stage, I'd like to open up the conversation to all of our panelists to interact with one another, share comments with each other. And I might begin just posing a question from our audience that I'll invite each of you to weigh in on and share your thoughts. So please feel free. We can do this elementary school style. You can raise your hand if you'd like to share something, and I'm happy to call your name that way. But I'd like to begin with just talking about the empowerment through knowledge transfer and technology that Dr. Groth, you touched on briefly in your comments. Can you speak a little bit more about that? How can we build the equivalent of extension services that, for example, the US has, agricultural extension services? How do you build something like that to bridge this technology gap or this knowledge gap that exists in a country like India?
Yes, I'll be happy to do so because, again, this was a real uh, long lesson to learn how to tackle the small farmers by telling them that there are better ways to farm. And many small farmers tend to be conservative in their approach, especially the older generations. And of course, many of the small farmers are elderly farmers. There is a sideline issue here that the youth is no longer interested in farming because it's so old-fashioned. Again, bringing any kind of innovation to the farming systems opens up the eyes of the next generations also. And the elderly farmers, sometimes reluctantly, are willing to follow the initiatives and the ideas of the younger people. And especially when they recognize that better farming means better income. And I think that is really the moving factor in the life of these small farmers is they find a way to escape poverty. And I think that is a very strong motivation for these small farmers that are feeling left behind. If we can show them a way through better farming systems and of course supported by better genetics or better seeds, and not just hybrids, but just seeds that are reliable. This issue was also mentioned by Dr. Kush. Seeds must be true to type. It must be what you say. And any kind of cheating on seeds is a criminal, is criminal to farmers. And that has been a long lesson in the history of my family, that seeds you sell to farmers must be true to type. And any deviation from that is just, in my opinion, is a crime that needs to be avoided at all costs. But again, going back to the core of your question, yes, there are so many small things that farmers can do to improve their crops. Raising better seedlings, controlling water supply better in rainy season farming. Rainy season farming turned out to be a real eye opener to many farmers. And it's happening again in countries like Nigeria, where we are now starting to operate. That in rainy season, of course, rice farming is fine. Most rice crops are depending on rain, but vegetables, in many cases, don't like too much rain. And you have to get rid of the excess water. And so drainage in that case is a big issue. That farmers, there are very simple ways to raise to protect the crops from excess water. So all these things, raising the crops in of growing the crops in raised beds is one very practical way, which is very simple to apply. So it's a package of very basic tools of improving your crops. And as you said, it used to be the job of extension services in some countries, some blessed countries, I might say, like United States, Holland, France, and in some countries, and especially I know Holland, the the government has given up on on extension service, farmer extension service, because farmers get bigger and bigger. They are considered to be independent people and they can run their own knowledge sources. But in these small farm, in these tropical countries, the governments have not provided much in the way of extension service. And then, of course, we have the big issue of the World Bank, who was trying to finance farmer extension services going through governments, public sector programs. And again, they found out the hard way that didn't work. Private sector is much better equipped to provide these extension and farmer support systems. So I think that should be encouraged, that there is a big role to play for private sector in developing our farmers. I think, if I may say so, in the presence of all these big people related to the CGIAR systems, the CGIAR systems are also very much government focused. And it takes more than governments to solve some of these problems. How to get the seeds produced, the good seeds, how to get them into the hands of the farmers. All that requires some private sector interventions. And I hope the World Bank will finally find out that there are other ways to bring good support to the farmers uh, outside of government programs alone.
Thank you, Dr. Groth, for that insightful um, answer to the question, and also just highlighting the need for true collaboration in this work, and not just depending on certain sectors to address these issues. I wanted to see if Dr. Vassal, Dr. Kush, either of you had any thoughts to add on this question of bridging technology gaps, or if we might take another audience question while we have time.
Let me add my comments on this topic. I think collaboration is very, very important, especially, when you talk of diseases, for instance, you need collaboration. Many times, like just like now in Africa, we have fall armyworm problem. It's just has come up a big problem. Then we had maize leaf necrotic disease, which has spread. Then there are several diseases which we have not been able to, make much progress, like banded leaf and sheath blight. So I think collaboration is very important, and this is where I think the at least within a country, just like in India, we have coordinated programs, and these coordinated programs, they have a very good structure. The headquarter, then there are a lot of regional station. There should be full cooperation, at least among them, and then they need to see how they can divide the total work which is required. Some people can produce some kind of pedigree population, some can do another population, advance maybe 2 or 3 cycles, and then each one distribute as bulk to all the different. So this is one way everyone benefits. If I supply 10 bulks to another station, I also receive 9 bulks from other people also which are doing so. So there are a lot of is what is called multiplier effect strategies. Whatever one person is do, how you multiply this kind of effect there. Then the other thing is like in hybrid program also, since I happen to work in a non-profit organization, nobody likes to distribute in-bird line evaluation nursery. Everybody will distribute hybrid evaluation, but not in-bird line evaluation. So if you really want to help people, all over the world, wherever those materials are suitable, try to produce good inbred line. No, I'm not saying all inbred line, agronomically good inbred line, 100, 200, whatever the number is there, try to distribute to different places. Now, when I started doing it, my idea was that they can see which are the good, but I wanted to have data back. But then everyone started pollinating in those lines, and then the data did not come. So I decided to give them, Instead of two replication, I gave them third replication, and I told them, okay, you can pollinate in that one so that you have seed of all these lines here. So I think if people can exchange germplasm a little bit easily, which is not very easy in hybrid program, but at least the non-profit organization or where the like countries like Brazil or India, where they have a very good structure, of coordinated programs, which are developed on every crop. I think they should, be very open in exchanging the germplasm, so that each one can benefit from each one's other's work. The other thing which I think like to highlight is, you mentioned about, you know how to uh, disseminate knowledge to the uh, resource poor farmers. Now I think if you see here now, the number of mobiles which have grown in India, practically, it is increasing, and the government has also promised that there will be high fee all over India in a very short period of time. This is another commitment which this government has made. So this is also now practically, at least in the government Doordarshan, which is the channel run by the government, there is a program at 5 o'clock or something. There's a somebody they talk who talk on different topics to give information. Then there is also, when the time of sowing, other thing comes, they try to inform, there. But capacity building, both, at the extension level, also at the breeder level, now with the new technology, biotech, the people who work even in transitional breeding, even they are not working in biotech, they have some knowledge, that what needs to be done. So this is very, very important in my opinion. I think the other thing now is the problem we are facing today. Dr. Kush mentioned, climate resilient, all these problems, trying to select for drought resistant varieties or which are require less input, and these are much more difficult problems together with the yield enhancing and other things, So this is where I think is very important. We need a strategy we can, you know, select for all these kind of problem in a much simpler way. Also, I think there are some problems which are very complex, which we have not been able to solve for a long time. Now, here we need to use very simple, skillful technology which can over this problem. I give you one example here, maybe few examples. Just like Dr. Kush mentioned, height, height reducing gene. How do you do in case of, in case of fruit trees? You know, the breeding takes long time, or breeding forest trees, which I've been involved, when Dr. Borla was there, he wanted me, those 6, 7 forest breeders, they used to come to Mexico and try to interact with me that what we are doing in maize. So basically what it was done, in mango, for instance, is a very good example. You have a habit that one year you have got very good bearing, the other year the mango is doesn't give you so much yield. But then planting at high density, how do you have? We don't have briquetting gene, but then they used cultural practices, try to prune the trees, and try to keep the height of the plant lower, but planting at almost double density. With this, what happened is they improved the yield almost twice, but then they also, the habit of alternate bearing, they also disappeared, So this is again one good example, is there. They have to use simple, skillful technology. Breeding will take long time, and those genetic mechanisms are not available. Same thing is true, is like this one, stay green trait. It's a very useful trait, If we can select for stay green trait, it's a kind of guarantee, that it will not be, susceptible to diseases which are affecting the leaves and other things, Stalk rots, again, is a big problem in maize. We have got bacterial stalk rot, fungal stalk rot, all those. We have been working for a long time. Now, if we use good standability as a trait, And I think it's possible, there were quite a few materials, lines, which can stand, even up to the maturity and the plants stay green. So you can correct the problem of stalk rot just through better standability of the maize. So again, these are simple solutions, one can address there. Also, in case of diseases, when instead of doing work in the field, if you can do work in the greenhouse, it can also. I think the example I want to give you, when I went to Thailand, I used to select for downy mildew, we had to plant spreader rows, and the epithologist had to go early in the morning, 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, and spread the inoculum to infect you know, the spreader rows. And then a week or 10 days, we will plant the lines which we need to evaluate for this one. So we moved this work completely in the lab, and then we could do downy mildew work all the year round. We had the pots which were infected, and we could put pots, or lines which were to be evaluated in between those infected lines. And so we were able to do work all the year round. And downy mildew, we could evaluate the lines when the plants are still very small. So this was again, different kind of technologies which we have to use, which are suitable. Like you go to Thailand, I mean, nobody talks about transplanting maize. This is the only country which transplant maize because of time factor, which Dr. Kush mentioned, So the interval between two to gain time, they are planting, nursery of maize plants right on the roads, and then transplant right there in the field. So this is again another example here. Sometimes you have to use completely unconventional technologies to overcome the time constraint you have with respect to growing two crops a year. So this is something I think is very, very important. Hmm?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd like to quickly invite Dr. Kush if you have any thoughts on this question before we move on to our closing of the session.
I think one area which was mentioned is very important is collaboration. Collaboration for sharing the information, for sharing the materials. India has a very good example of what they call coordinated programs. On each crop or all the major crops, at least, there are coordinated programs where the scientists working on the same crop, they have very good network. They meet once a year. They exchange the germplasm. They write the reports on the testing programs, because one of the important component of this collaboration is having the materials or varieties or hybrids of the same crop, testing those together by planting in different locations. That gives a lot of information about the adaptability of certain genotypes, and those can be picked and multiplied. And so this sharing of information as well as the sharing of the germplasm is extremely important. Internationally, there used to be uh, exchange of germplasm for thousands of years. Farmers used to share, the breeders used to share the germplasm internationally, and it was considered as a human heritage. Germplasm was considered human heritage. After the CBD, Convention on Biodiversity, this situation has changed because most of the countries thought that the germplasm should be a national heritage. So there are certain restrictions on sharing the germplasm. And of course, this restricts the germplasm. You have to have various approaches, MTAs, and to facilitate that exchange of germplasm. So this has affected the collaboration, but nothing is more important than collaboration, sharing the information, sharing the germplasm for progress in improving grow varieties. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kush. And I want to thank Dr. Groth, Dr. Vasal, both of you again for all of your comments and sharing these thoughts with us today. I now want to invite a special guest to join us and share some remarks with us. Dr. Ashok Dalwai, the Chief Executive Officer of the NRAA within the Ministry of Agriculture, Cooperation and Farmer Welfare. Please join us and share your thoughts and summation for this event.
Thank you, Madam Meghna. I recognize the presence of His Excellency Martin, the Ambassador, Dr. Ratan Lal, Dr. Simon Groot, Dr. Surinder Vasal, Dr. Gurudev Kush, Mr. Dilip Rajan, and my other friends from the embassy and other participants. Thank you very much for giving me this privilege to be with you this morning for you and this evening for us here. So let me share a few thoughts about the very important theme that you have adopted for discussion. It's a very burning issue, and the topic is lifting from poverty the small holders. I heard two wonderful lectures by the World Food Prize laureates and also other scientists. As expected of any scientists, they have driven deep into the subject. My purpose would be today to take a broader picture and create a framework of how do we ameliorate the conditions of the people below the poverty line, and with particular reference to the farmers. Let me begin by saying that in India, the farmers are poor. We have a regular income survey, and the last survey was done by the National Sample Survey Office in 2012-13. And when we extrapolated that particular data to 2015-16 at 2015-16 prices, what we find is the average annual income of a farm family in India is around rupees 100,000, or in terms of US dollars, it is around $1428. It is that abysmal. The income is very important with respect to welfare, and incomes can't come without employment. Classical economics teaches us that employment and incomes go hand in hand. Otherwise, we would have to have always a safety net from the government, which is not a sustainable mode. Of this low average income that Indian farmers enjoy or suffer, use the appropriate word, the ratio between farm and non-farm incomes is 60:40. That means the farms are contributing only around 60% of the incomes, while the farm family is to depend on non-farm activities, including skilled and unskilled labor, to generate the balance 40%. Another important aspect to bear in mind is the size of the land holding matters in determining the ratio of the farm income. The larger farmers derive nearly 85% of their incomes from farm, while the small and marginal farmers derive around 35 to 40%, which means that their dependence on non-farm activities goes up to 60%. So the point that 86% of Indian farmers are smaller and marginal farmers makes it that much more complex to address the issue of poverty. And this average size of holding today, as per 2011 census, is 1.1 hectares. With the increasing density, it may have further come down, and that we will know only when we have the 2021 data. As I was talking to you about the importance of employment, the sad part is that agriculture is able to generate around 185 days of employment per annum for the farm families, which means that another 180 days out of season, they're jobless, and therefore they go for work in other quarters, other non-farm domains. So how do we therefore build an agriculture system where we are able to promote gainful employment, link it to generation of gainful profits and thereby incomes, and consequently improve their welfare? Now, the common perception across the world and also in India is that small and marginal farms are inefficient. I would beg to differ partly from this, that a lot of research by the agriculture economists show that the productivity levels on the small farms are not really as bad as made out to be, or not as much lesser than that we achieve on the large farms. Yet, the productivity and production which the small farms are able to compete with the large farms is neutralized by three other factors. One important factor is that there is inefficiency of the resource use. An account of poor total factor productivity that comes from the small size of the farm, the cost of production is high and therefore it negatively impacts on the profits. And the second important aspect is that the total volume of production being small despite larger productivity levels and production, the cost of transaction vis-a-vis the market is high and therefore they're not able to monetize appropriately. When you have high cost of production and low level of monetization, the obvious impact is on the profits, and therefore we see that profits on the small farms, marginal farms, are relatively lesser than at the large farms. If this is the case, what is the way out? The way out, of course, is to treat agriculture not as a default profession, but how do we make it a profession by choice? Any rational person, a man is a rational economic being, will accept agriculture as an agri-enterprise or agri-business and therefore make it a choice profession only if he is able to generate profit. And we believe today that we can generate profits even from the small and marginal farms, provided we are able to address all issues relating along the agriculture value system. So we cannot practice agriculture in a compartmental manner as we have done so far, particularly post the Green Revolution phase, where our aim was to generate food security for the country, assuming that there was a natural market. Yes, natural market existed in the homes, in the mouths of the people and the mouths of the cattle. But today, we know that if we want to monetize and generate profits, we need to link up with the markets. So along the agriculture value chain, pre-production, production, and post-production, these three broad segments need to be addressed in terms of science, technology, business management principles, skills, knowledge, and information levels of the farmers. So what I would suggest is that coming first to the production segment, we'll deal very briefly that there are specific problems, special problems, which revolve around the small and marginal farmers. Since the small and marginal farmer cannot be a specialized monocrop or mono-agriculture based practitioner, we will have to go for integrated farming systems. When you talk of integrated farming systems, it is not just about complementary relationship between or among the crops, but we need to go for different subsectors, that is agronomic crops, horticultural crops, dairy and animal husbandry, fisheries, aquaculture. So when we are able to integrate these things, we'll be able to harvest the supplementary and complementary relationship and build not only horizontal intensity, but also vertical intensity for the small and marginal farmer. The second one, of course, given the climate change complexity, we need to have climate resilient crops, climate resilient varieties, climate resilient cropping technology, and all kinds of not just plant breeder based technology, but also soil management based, water management based, and also the post-harvest management based technologies given to the farmers. Now, I think more important for us is to talk about the post-harvest management. And that's where the bigger challenge that comes both to the small farmers as well as the large farmers in India. So I would say that one of the major challenges is that the scales of economy do not operate for a small and marginal farmer. So how do we build a scale of economy so that we're able to rationalize the cost of production, improve the efficiency of output management? So the way forward, therefore, is to adopt large-scale farmer producers organizations. We know from the experience of European Union that when we have producer organization, they are able to gain input and output management, and their experience is more than 30 years old. So in India today, the target is to build at least 10,000 producers organizations by 2024. And when we have this kind of a thing, then we bring the farmers together and link them up with the technology producer providers and the sponsoring companies in the market. Second one, of course, is to promote what is called contact farming and contact services, because the small and marginal farmers do not have the capacity to withstand the market fluctuations. It would be very important that we link them up with the sponsoring companies who then take the risk of the price fluctuation post harvest. And simultaneously, in order to impart scales of economy to the small farmers, we can also have contract for services, that means water management, pest and disease management, harvest management, risk management. So the new act, for example, talks about contract farming for prices, contract farming for services. And third, I think what we need is aggregation platforms. No matter what is the agriculture market structure, how efficient it is, it cannot be effective unless we have aggregation platforms in close proximity to the farm gate. Within a radius of 5 to 6 kilometers, if we can build large number of aggregation platforms, the smaller and marginal farmers will be able to aggregate their produce and then link up with the wholesale markets. And another important aspect, of course, is the building of gross capital. Now, unless we build capital, I mean, when I say capital, I'm not just talking money, I'm talking infrastructure, backward and forward linkages, then the small farmer will not be able to link up with the markets. Therefore, in order to promote capital formation in agriculture, we need to provide access to this marginal farmer to the institutional credit at subventions. So both at the production stage as well as at the post-production stage, we need to provide institutional credit. Post-production stage is very important because that is where the distress sale happens immediately after the harvest. We need to build financial muscles of the small farmer to withstand the market dips and wait for an appropriate buoyancy and then start selling. So therefore, what kind of negotiable warehouse receipt system can we build? And then, of course, risk management, whether it is relating to diseases, pests, or it's the weather, climate, etc. We need to have real-time forecasting and sharing of data with the farmers using the emerging technologies. Information technology, as also the emerging technologies, have to be made use of so that we are able to forecast prices, forecast demand, forecast weather, forecast temperature, forecast all kinds of risks that actually impact a biological production system of agriculture, and share that data in real time using the mobile applications. So, and the last point that I would like to make is that diversification is extremely important. If we want the small and marginal farmers to increase the return in investment on the small farms, we need to lift them from the agronomic based crops to the high value agriculture. That means vegetables, fruits, animal husbandry, dairy, etc. Because we know that in case of vegetables, for example, not only is the rate of return high, but the productivity itself is so high that they will be able to actually gain greater income from that. And it is possible for us to transfer new technology like the poly houses, greenhouses, controlled environment based horticulture, and thereby I think actually improve their incomes. We have seen whether it is the Amul experiment or now the vegetable cultivation promotion based on centers of excellence. We're seeing that not only are the productivity is increasing, but also they're able to add value and link themselves up to the markets. And the last point that I would like to make is about extension, because we talked about extension. Transfer of technology is very important. Innovation, science, and technology, yes, that is generated at the labs on the farm, which is okay. But unless we're able to transfer that to the farmers, it is barren. And now I understand that, yes, in our country, we had a very robust extension system. It has met a bit of suffering in the recent years, but then we now need to broad base that extension system to cover not just the crops like the wheats and paddy and sorghum and millets, but also animal husbandry, dairy, horticulture, agriculture, marketing, etc. And there, since manpower-based extension is very costly and unaffordable, we need to take advantage of the information technology and the digital programs. If we are able to optimally blend the digital program, geospatial technology, along with the manpower-based technology, then I think we'll be able to reach out to the farms much more effectively with technology backstopping by the National Agriculture Research System, including the ICR centers, the state agriculture universities, the Krishi Vijnana Kendras, and all others who are serving this. So I think there is a way out. I would like to re-emphasize as I close my talk that small and marginal farms are not inefficient. In fact, thanks to the personal care that they can give, they are much more efficient. What we need to provide them is to build scales of economy by building new institutions, providing them credit, and deploying new technology, and adopting what's called a folk to farm approach rather than a farm to folk approach. That means it's based on market demand, both domestic and global. So I would stop here and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dalwai, for those compelling comments. And we're honored to have had you join us and share these thoughts with us. Let me just quickly sum up and give thanks to all of our speakers today, all of our guests. Ambassador Vandenberg, thank you for joining us as well. It's been a huge honor to hear all of you speak and be a part of this this whole event. A big thanks to East West Seed and FICCI and the ambassador of the embassy of the Netherlands, I'm sorry, for hosting this and bringing these bright minds together to discuss this this very important issue. And I hope everyone leaves with the inspirational comments that all of our speakers have left and the tone that Dr. Dalwai set to take action on this issue. So thank you again for joining us, and take care and be safe.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Magna.
Thank you very much. Namaskar to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining. Thank you very much on behalf of East West Seed.
Thanks.